The school district budget committee is officially called to order. Go around and do quick introductions. So I want to start with Joe. So sorry about outcome of Saturday's game and happy about outcome of Saturday's game. Anyway, go ahead, Joe.
Well, and that's in the official meeting. Tomorrow's gonna be a good game. My name's Joe James. I'm the proud father of a Blanchette freshman. And I'm a community member.
Welcome. And Tanya, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Tanya Boxler and I've been on the budget committee for so long, I can't remember how long it's been, but it's been a long time. I had 3 kids in the Mount Angel school system and they're all in their 30s now and doing their own thing.
Thank you.
Nan Fleck,
Community member
community
extraordinaire.
member. Yeah, I've been on the school budget for as long as you've needed me.
Thank you. Thank you.
You all. I'm a community member, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
John Dooley, community member, came on with Pete and Nan. Of the 6-year. For season.
All right, welcome and thank you. And I'm Sherry Reedman and I am on the school board. I'm the chair.
Andrew Powell, also on the school board, vice chair. Teresa Kincaid, also on the school board.
Mark Brendan, school board.
Rachel Stuckey, superintendent.
Christy Reed, business manager.
And we have our ever-present Jill supporting us as well. So
Once her day.
thank you,
Still
Jill.
in the core like she got.
So really the first meaningful agenda item after we get through the meaningful introductions is election of a chairperson and secretary. And typically that would be one of the community members serving as the chairperson and the secretary. So I would open it up for nominations. Let's go chairperson first.
We nominate John Dooley for chair.
I second that.
Second, third.
Been
I closed.
nominated. And John, are you willing to accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you. very
Any
much.
other nominations, even though Nan has graciously closed the nomination? I'm hearing no additional nominations, so all in favor of John Dooley being our chair for this budget season, say aye.
I,
Hi.
All right, any opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much.
Okay, now
Thank you
you can take it over, sir.
All righty, so my first job to do is we need to have nominations for the secretary for this year. 2023.
I'd like to nominate Tanya. Yeah.
Nan, you snuck that in.
There is a motion to nominate Tanya. Is there a second? Is there any other nominations?
I'm going to close the nomination.
Closing nominations are closed and that's been seconded. And so Tanya, guess what?
Woo-hoo!
So thank you very much. Congratulations. So we will forward. Thank you, everybody.
You want to do a vote?
Oh, yeah. we have-
All in favor, say aye for Tanya. Aye. Opposed. Okay, motion carries. All righty, so moving on to superintendent's budget message.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am going to apologize in advance because some of you know me very well and know that I love to write. And with this budget message, I did enjoy writing. It's one of the things I do well. I submit for you for consideration the proposed budget for the Mount Angel School District for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. This proposed budget reflects the goals of the district and directs resources where needed most, direct service to students.
This is on page 10. I see you guys all looking for your pages. It's on page 10.
No, I'm glad you said something.
Right after executive summary.
It was just a year ago that as a district, we prepared for a $1.2 million budget shortfall. This substantial loss of funding, due largely to the destabilization of student enrollment over the course of the pandemic, was met with caution and concern. The total amount of reductions was projected to take years to recover from. While a reduction in school days for students was prevented this school year, the school district experienced a staffing shortage and school and department budget freezes from the general fund. These cuts were felt daily across the organization, and school district staff has done a commendable job working within the constraints of the 2022-2023 school year budget deficit. By all accounts, the 2022-23 school year has been a year to rise above the remnants of a pandemic. It's been a school year focused on offering new opportunities for students and families, celebrating partnerships, and refining staff practices. I'm pleased to say the Mount Angel School District is on the move and good news abounds. The high school, long overdue for increased student offerings, added boys and girls soccer, and band and drama classes resumed. District staff were provided with a financial retention bonus as acknowledgement for their efforts and loyalty using one-time state staff recruitment and retention grant funds. Our partnerships continue to thrive thanks to the generous leadership and support of community members. A new welding room is being added to the high school and will be ready for use for the 2023-24 school year. The district is the recipient of a $2.5 million seismic upgrade at the middle school and a potential recipient of a $4 million state capital improvement grant. Our middle school principal is being recognized as the middle school principal of the year for the entire state of Oregon. All three schools began an essential student-focused journey by further optimizing Late Start Wednesday collaborative staff practices and implementing response to intervention at work practices. Though the required structures take time to understand, design, and implement, each school is on its way to providing appropriate academic and behavioral support based on explicit data to any student within the school day. A new five-year strategic plan is in place that affirms and ensures academic excellence, the well-being of each student, healthy partnerships with the community, and safe schools. With careful and scheduled monitoring, students, families, and the district itself will realize higher levels of performance and excellence in each of these crucial areas. Budget development. The district's current and projected enrollment serves as the starting point for the development of this budget proposal. Although the Mount Angel School District has seen an increase in the enrollment of students this school year, the numbers have not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels. This budget proposal assumes that the Mount Angel School District will see a slight decrease in student enrollment for 2023-2024. A state school fund of $9.9 billion for all school districts is also reflected in this budget proposal, funding that does fall short of offering current service levels next year. The combination of lower student enrollment and a proposed state school fund of $9.9 billion leaves the school district in a budget deficit for the 2023-2024 school year. To bridge this shortfall, and most importantly, avoid disruption to student learning, the remainder of one-time federal COVID-19 relief funds, $500,000, will be applied to staff salaries for next school year, and departments and schools will continue to operate with restricted budgets for materials. The proposed budget does reflect the strategic use of grant funding, including annual student investment account funds, high school success funds, state grants, and federal title grants for staffing. The annual proposed budget plan for the upcoming school year. This budget proposal includes a total investment of $17,897,908, represented by 21 separate funds, the largest of which are the General Fund and Capital Projects Fund. The total budget for all funds is a 25% increase over the 2022-2023 budget. This budget proposal includes ongoing allocations for strategic investments to support improved outcomes for every student while recognizing the financial challenges that we face with adequately funding all priorities. The general fund represents 60% of the 2023-2024 proposed budget for all funds and accounts for most operating activities of the district, except those activities required to be accounted for in another fund. 80% of the general fund is represented by salaries and benefits. School Board Policy DA Fiscal Policies provides guidance regarding the financial objectives for managing general fund reserves. Those objectives include establishing a sustainable level of programs, protecting the district from unnecessary borrowing to meet cash flow needs, providing prudent reserves to meet unexpected emergencies, protecting against catastrophic events, and meeting the uncertainties of state and federal funding. As outlined in the policy, all general fund contingency and reserve accounts are budgeted to result in the levels required. Going into the 2023-2024 school year, we remain dedicated to improving student learning outcomes, remain focused on student well-being, strengthening partnerships with families and community, and improving safety for all. With a clear understanding of the importance of living within our financial means over the long term, it's equally important to acknowledge the possibility of a budget shortfall in 2024-2025, a year from now. Federal pandemic funds will not be available to us a year from now. To stabilize the financial health of the school district, we must continue to focus on increasing student enrollment, as well as making future financial decisions based on data and return on investment. As of the writing of this budget message, the school district is pursuing voter approval of a bond to address critical facility needs at each school. Approval of a bond will relieve the need for unexpected emergency repairs to aging equipment that is failing. Should the proposed bond not be approved by voters, additional funds will need to be set aside to meet unexpected equipment failure. During the 2022-2023 school year, the school district has spent an additional $66,500, and actually it grew more last week, for unanticipated repair costs that were not identified in the maintenance department's budget. In conclusion, we recognize the importance of presenting a quality, easy to understand budget to the community. This budget reflects our district's dedication to sound fiscal management, optimal use of funding, and careful monitoring of enrollment, while allowing for a contingency of $415,381. In closing, I want to thank our staff, students, parents, and community for their ongoing support and patience during this very challenging fiscal time. And I would also like to express my sincere appreciation to the members of the Budget Committee for their service, support, thoughtful analysis, dialogue, and consideration of the proposed budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, is there any questions to Rachel? For her beautiful letter? A little bit sad, it's realistic and, it's tough, for small school districts like that. And that's why our job seems like it's tougher and tougher every year. So, if there is no questions.
I do have a question on
Okay.
the bond thing. This is a nice, well done thing that we got in the mail, right?
Mhm.
When it talks about the increase for the school bond, and it says for the assessed value annually, monthly, whatever, estimated increase for that, for how long is that? I don't think I read that anywhere. How long does that go?
8 years.
8 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Was that on the ballot somewhere that I didn't see, or?
It was probably in the description of 4. When, there's for and against,
Oh, okay.
it's probably in that explanation. I think
Okay.
I saw that in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then the remaining 12 years, it drops down to, off the top of my head, I want to say it's like $1.50.
That's not around the dollar.
Yeah, $1.52.
In 12 years.
After 8 years, for the remaining 12 years, it'll drop because the other bond will be paid off.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah. Okay, so I just have a little presentation and then I thought we could go through, not the whole budget, but I have just some highlighted spots in the budget that I would call to your attention. And then if you have questions as we go through this, feel free to ask, or we'll have time at the end. I wanted to, one of the things that Rachel mentioned was that our enrollment is decreasing for next year. And I thought I would just elaborate on that a little bit. So this year, or next year, the reason why we're projecting a decrease is because we're losing a very large senior class. And it's being replaced by, we're estimating about 45 incoming kinders. And so we have a large, I think, 67 students, senior class leaving, 45 kids coming in. Even with estimating about 10 new kids coming in, it's still going to put us less than we are this year. So just wanted to mention that we're not projecting losing any kids like out of, leaving to go to other districts. It's really more so just the way the numbers are. People must.
And we don't know with this new subdivision in town, we haven't heard of any families coming in or. Because when's the kids have to sign up for school if they're moving into town?
Well,
By a certain time?
do you want me to?
Yeah, they can sign up as early as the beginning of August up through the first day of school, the first week of school at any time.
Okay.
We have had supportive spies who have been watching and seeing that the children that they have noticed are younger than school age.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's why we need a little bit of growth, so, okay.
And some also might wait till the end of the school year before they switch. There's a lot of different things, but. Okay, so I also wanted to point out too, you will not see in here is the school bond. So we will have to meet next week regardless and to finalize the bond. I just didn't really want to put it in here and jinx anything, so that's why it's not in there.
Jinx anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you're supposed to manifest what the positive, but I'm the other way. Okay, so first off, I thought it would be good to kind of give you a little background of what's going on with the state of Oregon, where I got the revenue projections and then some other little information. So as Rachel said, the state school fund as of today is set at $9.9 billion. This is still under OASBA, which is the group I belong to, Oregon Association of School Business Officials. Their current service level calculation of 10.3 billion. They are currently advocating for an increased state school fund. Our district is one of their model districts to present to legislation because we're using so much one-time funds to be able to balance the budget this year. And they're able to show, if we weren't able to have these funds, this is how many teachers we would have lost, and we don't have those funds next year. May 17th is the state's next revenue forecast. Predictions are that there will be an increase in revenue over April's projections. What we don't know is if that will be a positive thing for us. You hear things from both sides. Nobody's really super confident in saying that it's going to go above 9.9. The end of the session, so it doesn't have to be done. The constitutional due date is June 25th. So we still have a ways to go before we'll really know what's going on there. So what does that mean for us? So we, as a district, decided to budget at 9.9 million. At the time that I started making the budget, that's what the majority of the school districts in Oregon were doing.
And Christy, that's billion, right?
Oh, billion, no, billion.
The class is 9.9.
9 billion, I'm sorry, we're billion, they're billion. I apologize. Yes, thank you. So yes. So the bill, the state school fund is 9.9 billion, and that is what we use to budget our allocation.
For 2 years though.
Yeah.
Correct?
Correct.
Yes, so
Yeah,
that number has to cover every school district for 2 years.
mhm, yes. And it's a 49-51 split, so they give us 49% upfront. And then the second year is a little bit larger because they know costs of everything's going to go up. So what we've done this year, we've added back a math teacher at the middle school. The budget you'll see for the most part is status quo, except for non-negotiables like property insurance, liability, benefits, salaries, our annual audit. Our general fund salaries and benefits increased about 16% over this current year, for projections. And we're using the remaining $500,000 in our ESSER or COVID relief funds and a larger than normal ending fund balance to balance the budget and save jobs. The increased ending fund balance is due to us having an increased enrollment this year, which we don't really get those funds until the end. So we're not seeing them until April and May. And so really we haven't been able to put them into place this year, so they will carry over into next year. And just as a reminder, these are one-time funds that have to be spent by September of 2024. So that's why the full amount's going to be used up this coming school year. Other considerations, our number of special needs continue to increase. We have a legal obligation to serve those needs of our students. Also, if we do get more like the $10.3 billion, we will explore adopting new textbooks because we are behind on that.
Yeah.
So
1.3.
billion.
That's the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, because if we get 10.3 billion, that essentially will add a couple $100,000 to our revenue. So $1 billion is equal to about $100,000. This is how it trickles down.
How much like ballpark is an adoption for like a content area, like language arts or math or social studies?
I'm glad you asked that. I can only compare it to a larger district that I've worked in, would be several $100,000 K-12. So I would imagine it would be at least $90,000. That
Like
would
K-12.
They're getting that as a vote report.
So here's just a spreadsheet that you can kind of see how we did revenue projections for this next year's budget over this year's budget.
We have that in our book.
No, this is just yeah. So there's a 7% increase in property taxes over last year. We're projecting a 50% increase in interest revenue. The interest is finally this year gone up. And so we're starting to see the benefit of that. 10% increase in state school fund over what we budgeted this year. And then also our $850,000 ending fund balance. The other difference is $110,000 decrease in ESSER last year. We had a $610,000. We used part of that for this year's budget, so we're only carrying over $500,000. There's 11% overall general fund revenue increase over 2022-23. And so, and I can send this out to you guys if you want to see it. It basically shows the actuals for the first 2 years, what we budgeted last year, and then what the proposed budget is. And then that yellow column is what the difference is between last year's budget and this year's projection. So I can send that so you guys can see that. So the projections that we use for expenditures, about a 4% increase in health benefits, 3% cost of living adjustment for all staff, plus step increases where it's applicable. Paid leave Oregon is starting September 1st, so we budgeted for that. Basically, it's 1% of our gross wages, and then the district pays 0.4 of that 1%. And then the employees pay that 0.6 as of right now. Salaries and benefits make up almost 80% of the general fund balance. And again, status quo in most expenditure lines, except for there's about a 20% increase in property and liability insurance, just because of everything that's going on in the education world. It bumps all the costs up. And then we have a 4% contingency per our board policy. Okay, so any questions on this before we kind of start going in through the document?
Earlier on, I thought one of the slides talked about a 16% increase in, was it personnel or staff?
Yeah, salaries and benefits.
Salaries and benefits.
Mhm.
What are a couple talking points for my neighbors and the next softball game and church when, like, how did that happen? Because that's a huge increase.
So there's a couple factors that goes into that. It's, you know, the general cost of going up. So, you know, the benefits going up. You know, is about 4%, the 3% cost of living, and then they get a step as well. So somebody, you know, goes from a step 13 to a step 14, they may get, you know, a 3% raise from that. Plus they get a 3% COLA on top of that because all of those are going up. The other piece too is, what I was going to address is that we made some changes in what is being paid out of general fund versus what's being paid out of grants this year compared to last year. For example, when I get to there, I'll go into it more, but one example is our special education. Typically, one of our employees was paid out of our IDEA grant. But instead of it being paid out of that grant, we're going to pay it with the general fund, and the IDEA grant is going to pay for extra expenses that may come up for the cost of educating SPED students, which is what the purpose of that grant is. So the 16% takes into account that the adds to the general fund in terms of FTE. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how I could show you what the total percentage was if you looked at just what the FTE was last year compared to this year. I might be able to do a calculation and send that to you so that you have more of an apples to apples view.
Okay.
Okay, so you're saying we're moving an FTE from a grant funded position essentially into the general,
Correct.
increasing. Okay.
Yeah. So the actual, and I think I have that number when we get into it, the actual increase for salaries and benefits for the entire budget, if I don't have it, I can calculate it. That might be a better number to show you what that percentage is. Because really this year, the only add to staff that we have is the math teacher. We don't have any other add to staff.
The middle school math teacher, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, I take that back. We also have a half-time maintenance positions too that we're hiring for. But I can definitely do something to show maybe more apples to apples and also show you what the total percentage was in salaries and benefits last year and versus this year between general fund and the actual grants. And that would probably give you a better percentage of what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that would help.
Okay.
I'm saying that that's such a huge increase just in the reality of today's economy. Very few of us probably got a 16% raise. And I'm fearful that that's the perception that will be out there that, wow, teachers got a 16% raise, and that's not
Reality.
that's not the case.
Right. Okay, that's a good point.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
And don't you also, when you budget for budgeting purposes, don't you budget for maximum benefit level?
correct. Yes,
If you hired a new teacher who was single,
correct.
their medical insurance wouldn't be as high as if they had a whole family.
That's correct. So like if
So
I,
a budget for the maximum, so it inflates that number,
correct.
even though you may not pay part of it or all.
Yeah, because of the difference between like, so a family insurance, we pay about $27,000 a year for insurance for a family versus like $12,000 a year for a single individual. So you're correct. When we budget, we want to budget high because we want to have those allowances in case we do hire, you know, somebody that's going to cost us a little bit more. But I can still give you those numbers that might make a little clearer picture for you, at least year over year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Christy, just so I have my brain wrapped around it, you will take this current year number of FTE, total cost of personnel, no matter where the funding is coming from.
Yes.
And then provide us with what's budgeted, total cost of personnel, number of FTE, no matter where the funding.
Yep,
Yeah, because as taxpayers,
yeah,
yeah.
Yep,
They
yep.
don't care as
Yeah.
much if it's general fund or grant fund.
True.
Right? They just want to see the total cost. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that. Thank
yep,
you.
yep, I can definitely do that. Okay, so, so I did do it. It increased by 10% in all funds, salaries and benefits. So 16% just in general fund, 10% overall, which I think it makes a lot more sense if you think about it, because 3% COLA plus a step, plus a 4% increase in benefits, plus the add to staff,
1.5 FTE.
1.5 FTE, 10% increase in salaries and benefits overall, I think makes sense. It sounds like I need to put it in something that, like, if the community wanted to see it, they would see it. So I can update the slideshow too, with that information. So, okay. Moving on. So like on page 25, we want to move to that page. We'll just start going through and I'll just bring your attention to some changes. So this is St. Mary's budget. There's not a lot of real significant changes. The general fund FTE is at 17.5 total, which is a little bit higher than last year. And again, that is because we moved a teacher from grant funded, but overall staffing at St. Mary's is status quo. There is no additional staff at St. Mary's this year. And then if you want to move on to page 29, this is for Mount Angel Middle School. Their FTE moved up from just a little bit actually, which is only a slight increase, but it's a little deceiving because they're the only school getting added to staff. They're getting a full-time math teacher. But basically what happened is with the shift, there was 2 shared JFK employees with the middle school. And with that increase or hire of the math teacher at the middle school, we were able to move those split employees to just Kennedy. So overall FTE doesn't look like it went up because, you know, a half a FTE left and went back to Kennedy where it belonged or started. Does that make sense? So even though the FTE doesn't look like it moved up, it is truly moving up by a new teacher. It just doesn't appear that way because it was a shift in FTE.
Part-time math teacher this last year, sounds like that shared with the high school. Now
Sort of, yeah,
that's how we're getting a full-time math teacher.
yeah. It was just, it did not make sense to do another year of that shared. It affected everybody. So, what else? Okay, so any questions on the middle school? Okay, so then moving on to page 32, this is the high school budget. You'll see that there's about a half FTE increase, and that is because of what I just explained. We moved those shared employees to just Kennedy. And so even though there's no add to staff, it's a half FTE increase because of that. And in terms of all the schools, all the supplies and material expenses are all status quo. There's no increases. So any questions on the school part of this? We'll move into special programs. So page 37 is where it begins our special education programs. So you'll see a decrease on page 37 from last year. That is not because we are seeing a decrease in our special education numbers.
Question. 37?
Yeah.
That's the requirement.
Oh, sorry. So the requirements piece, so you see where it went from 276 to 155. And so just to point that out, that is not us having less expenses in SPED expenses. Basically, our IDEA grant is picking up that difference. We really now are having about the same as last year, the 276,000. But the IDEA grant is just paying for that because it's considered extra expenses versus you're not supposed to really be using an IDEA grant for salaries and benefits. And this is for out of placement or out of district placement. So if we have to have a child go to, for example, Oasis, which is a program that's offered through the ESD, that can be paid by the IDEA grant and not the general fund. So that's where you see that decrease. Makes sense? Okay. And then page 39, this is where you will see the opposite effect. You'll see an increase in FTE and salaries. And that's because we moved them all out of their buildings and moved them all into the SPED fund. So it doesn't change the way, it doesn't change the budget, it just changes where it's being paid out of. So that they're all, this coming school year will all be full-time SPED employees. So they're all going to be paid out of SPED rather than a grant or a mixture of general fund and SPED. Does that make sense? Okay. But there is no add to staff for that. On page 41, this is a new line item. It's for remediation or summer school. At this point, there is no grant coming from the state for summer school, which we have used in the last 2 years. And we have a huge need for specialized summer school for kids with learning loss in specific areas. And so we're going to have some very targeted summer school this summer for areas that are the most needed, whether it's math or reading seem to be the two that bubble up. And so this was carved out to pay for that because we felt it was an important investment.
Do they do that at this school? I mean, at the schools here, we don't ship them off to another school, just pay the fee?
No, we do it here. And it should be potentially all 3 schools.
Are they using similar teachers? I mean, are they using just?
Yes, usually we have our own teachers that will.
Get paid a little bit extra for this.
Yeah, it's usually like a 4 to 6 week program, 4 days a week. So that's for the remediation part of summer school.
Question, summer school. Were there programs not there to apply for? Did we apply and not get them? Have we not heard back on whether we could potentially get one? Where are we at?
The state did not fund a summer school this year.
Okay,
There is legislation for an early literacy, K-5, maybe it's even K-3.
It's K-5, but only 10% can go to for the 5th grade.
Oh, okay. But it has not passed yet. And so Colt Gill basically said, right, Colt Gill? I was thinking Gill Colt, okay. Colt Gill basically said add a budget without it because he didn't seem very confident that we would be getting it. So if we do get it, then we would just not use our general fund for the literacy part of it, because that is a piece of the planned summer school, that and math. So, but yeah, they didn't budget for it this year.
So
unfortunately.
this is Tanya. I have a quick question. So I think I'm lost on that. So where is the summer school budget coming from again?
We carved out part of general fund to
Okay.
pay for summer school this year. So in past years, we've been using a summer school budget. That's why you don't, a summer school grant. So that's why you don't see this expense the last few years. It's new this year because we are actually having to pay for it out of our general fund.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions on summer school at all? Okay, so page 43, this is our English language learners account. There is no added staff. We just had a position that went from being grant funded to being funded by the general fund. So that's why you see an increase of 2.25 to 3.25. So that one individual is now being paid by general fund. And when we get to the Student Investment Act, which is where this particular individual was paid before. I'll explain a little bit more about our thought process on that grant funding when we get to that page.
How many students K-12 or English learners?
Well, do you know the answer to that?
It's about, isn't it about 150 or so, 180?
180, all of them. I don't know,
Okay,
the active
K-12.
number is, yeah, but total 100-ish.
We've also had an unprecedented number of newcomers this year, and I don't know the number off the top of my head. But that has come with some significant extra training for those kiddos as well.
And remind everyone what a newcomer is.
So they have had no formal education in the United States prior to coming here, is that correct?
They're new to the country.
In the country.
And then within that, we also have students without a formal education, so you can divide newcomers into two groups. Those that have had education in their the country of origin and those that have had no formal education. So we have both of those needs going on right now. And maybe triple the number of newcomers than we've seen in recent years.
Because probably most school districts are seeing that. They're not, we're not being picked on because we're a small district, whatever we're at.
Those are protected funds, right, that have to be used for that service.
So they're not, I mean, it's general fund. So, I mean, it's all, you know, a big pot of money, but this is separated out for this purpose. But I mean, if we had a large decrease, you know, and it made sense to have one less person in the department, I mean, there's nothing saying that we couldn't do that. That makes sense. It's not set in stone, I guess.
That amount.
Yeah, it's not like a restricted grant where it can only be used for English language learners. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's general fund and this is just allocated to that department. Okay, so page 59 is the business department, and you'll see an increase in this, and this, we've already talked about it. There's about 20% increase in insurance. You'll see that under 651 and 653 towards the bottom of this page. That is the biggest increase that you'll see in terms of expenses. There's no way around it. We're part of a pool of insurance with all our school districts, so it's not like something we can, you know, shop around for. Okay, so moving into page maintenance department, which is on page 61. So this department is budgeted to get a half of an FTE increase over this year. Basically, they have been down staff since during COVID. And because of our budget issues, we just haven't added anybody back in that department. And so we've gotten to the point now where it's critical that we hire an additional person. Because right now we have somebody doing basically 2 jobs, a school and then her normal job.
Yeah,
Of course.
So just point of clarification for everyone, the additional staffing is for custodial, not maintenance to fix things that are breaking down. And I think there's a common misperception that somehow we use if we don't have enough custodial support, that's part of the reason that things are breaking down. And those are 2 very separate issues. But what we have found is that we have one custodian at JFK who doesn't start until after the students go home. And so the bathrooms, even though they get cleaned at night, by the middle of the next day are filthy again. We don't have anyone tending to that during the school day for our students. And it's things like that that we want to be able to respond to for our students. So that's really where most of this is coming from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. It's pretty sad that we have to budget somebody for something that's as important as that. you know, for the schools.
Yeah, we're still down about 0.5 FTE in custodial, even with adding this 0.5 in. We've traditionally always had 6 FTE in the custodial department.
So when they work part-time, that could be like 4 hours a day or something, all 5 days a week.
Mhm.
Instead of like 8 or 10 hours, 2 or 3 days, so good, at least they're every day.
Yeah, yeah. The remaining budget is a flat budget. You will see, if you go down to, on this page 61, towards the, under the 400s, the 410 and the 460, you'll see a significant drop there. And the reason for that is that for our COVID funds or our ESSER funds last year, that's where I plugged it in with the note that we could not use those funds. It was just a place to put the money so that it was budgeted for. But the intention was never to use it. And so that's why there's the drop. But the money that we're budgeting for this year is truly what was budgeted last year for him to use, if that makes sense. Maybe I just wanted to point that piece out. But it's important to note, you know, that if the bond does not pass, that this budget's concerning because, you know, like Rachel said, about $65,000 has been used this year to fix things, which means that money has not been used to do other things that we normally would do during the year in terms of like, you know, like rebarking.
Well, I think that kind of answers a question that I'm afraid to ask, and that is why we have had such deferred maintenance over the past, and that's why we're in the mess we're in right now, is because we should have done this and we didn't do this and we didn't have the money and it didn't get done.
No, that's not it. So the big ticket items right now that we're having to worry about for the bond are end of life things like boilers and the HVAC systems. And then like the pipes, like for example, in this building. Those are things that, those have been maintained. We do annual testing, things that we're supposed to do with those. That wasn't a lack of maintenance on that. The things that aren't happening are like, you know, not putting bark down at St. Mary's or not getting to do some of the nice to do things that he would have wanted to do with the budget. Everything has gone to need this year and not the things that he wants to do that are extra. So as we continue to only do these emergencies, then it's not really deferred maintenance. It's just things that he's not getting to do that.
Who's the he?
I'm sorry, our facilities director.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, refinishing the gym floor,
Mhm.
it used to be done every decade. Special, special. We put ropes up. We move people to stay off the floor.
Mhm.
And then it got to be done more often, and now it's not getting done every year, every other year. So those are the kind of the things that just aren't being budgeted for. And so then we get to a point where we have to do.
Yeah, so the gym floors all have been done, I think, this year or last.
In the last 2 years.
Yes. So, and they've also stripped and waxed all the classrooms as well. So all those things are happening this every 2 years, I think he does now for the gym floors. And I can double check on that for sure.
You know, Nan, I think, you know,
Yeah, John.
unfortunately, you know, I was on the budget committee for the school bond. Unfortunately, it really needs to pass. And if it doesn't pass, we're gonna probably have to get together and figure out something and pass something, probably smaller. And we'll be back at the same problem we got again. It's just gonna be patching stuff. So
Correct.
we just gotta keep our fingers crossed, you know, through the next couple of days, see what happens. But if it fails, then, you know, we've got to get back on the horse and figure it out, because you're absolutely right. There's a lot of deferred maintenance that they're just patching up
Yeah.
that won't work. for another
Okay,
couple
Sherry,
years.
what do you do?
Well, I don't see it as deferred maintenance. I see major systems in our buildings are at their end of life. And they've been maintained. They've been doing the repairs and they can't keep repairing them because they're dying. So it's not because we haven't really been maintaining the way we should. it's because they've aged and they've aged out of their expected life expectancy.
Mhm.
So that's what I would say.
One of the things we talked about is maybe the age of like boilers, like 50, 60 years old. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
they're ready to die,
Mhm.
and no matter how much you maintain them or try, they do have a life. And that's, I think, the bulk of what the bond measure is for those expenditures, so.
And the siding on this building, which when it was installed, it was a cool thing, and now they're not using it in Oregon anymore because it's not good in wet climates. So, yeah, you know, those types of things, but no matter how much we can maintain these systems, it wouldn't have changed the fact that the siding needs to. be
Well, okay.
replaced.
Okay, and this is
Yeah,
a rabbit
yeah,
hole.
it is, yeah.
But when we had the last bond, we did a lot of really cool things. We got our high school out of the ghetto is what we did with that money there. We did wonderful things there. But those boilers were old when we did that. And I guess I'm concerned that some of the necessary things weren't considered when we were, and I'm glad we spent the money on that building because I'm telling you, it looked terrible up there and it was this, the whole spirit of our culture up there, whatever I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It was just awful and it needed to be done.
Yeah.
And Annie, you're the most recent graduate up there. You saw what it was when you were going to high school there. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's my deal. I'm glad we did it, but we must not have been looking at the age. I mean, the boilers were 50 years old then. So we weren't doing stuff.
And they probably back 5, 6 years ago, they're probably working probably okay.
Yeah.
It's the last 2 or 3 years, they've gone downhill pretty bad, so
Yeah.
it's, you know.
Okay, I
Yeah, just-
apologize.
And it is.
So I think the terminology we need to also use is preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
That's being done fairly well in all
Yeah.
the buildings.
Mhm.
But as we're discussing, some of these things are 60 years old and you can't prevent them from dying.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with a few of these items.
Yes.
So then the
Yes,
preventative
yes,
things like the gym
Yeah.
floors,
Yes, yeah.
classroom, those are all getting done.
Yeah, I can speak like at least from the budget perspective. I've been here for 3 years. And this is the first year we've been every single week, I've been getting more and more. Oh, this, we need to fix, you know, this, we have another leak in the dry sprinkler system or whatever. And so the last, 2 years before that, it was not, it was never an expense that came up. So, when it rains, it pours, it seems like, because everything's just started breaking at once, honestly. So, any other questions about that or conversation about that? Did I want to? Okay. Page 63 is our transportation budget. Nothing has really changed for this particular budget. We did get a grant from the DEQ to purchase 2 new buses. They will not be here until the spring of 2024. We did put a little bit of money aside this budget. We'll put some money aside next budget to pay those payments. Because they pay, we have to pay a certain percentage of those buses. And these are buses that will no longer be allowed because of DEQ emissions in, I want to say 2025. So this is just something that we had to do.
So it's replacing buses we have that will no longer be allowed.
Correct, yeah.
Are you happy with the amount of students that ride the buses every day? Or do we have empty buses? I guess I'm driving through downtown Portland and all the buses are empty. But are we meeting needs or are?
We are fully utilizing our buses, we do not have empty buses.
The bus, my kids ride the bus, both one bus, they have 2 buses and they're both overfilled. Let's say at this point.
We really need to do one more route this year, but because of staffing, we couldn't. And so,
So that's good.
yeah. Page 68 is technology. And again, this is a status quo budget. It appears to have a big drop, and that's because the same thing as maintenance. I put $100,000 of extra funds in there to save for next year. But his budget is this year is basically what he spent or was budgeted for last year that he truly was going to spend. So not a real decrease. Okay, so page 70, this shows the transfers that we're making this year, which is up from last year. So this 264,000, you can see it's about $100,000 more. And these transfers include $37,000 for the new bus payments that we're expecting in spring. $75,000 to put into the curriculum fund to start building that up so that we can purchase curriculum. And then this is the first year we're actually having to supplement the food service program with the general fund. The food service program has been self-sustaining the last 2 years because it was fully funded by the federal government, but they stopped that this year. And so we have gone through our fund balance that we had saved. And so now the general fund is going to have to pick up some of the food service fund this year. So about $49,000 is what we're predicting that will cost.
What's the building maintenance budget? Because it's pretty much the same.
So this is, it's called QZAB. It's a QZAB bond that we received, I want to say in 2013 or 14. And basically we put that much money aside every year into an account. And then that account is going to pay off that bond when it's paid off and done. So I don't know the date. I can tell you what the date is though. This bond was taken out at the same time as the other bonds, but it's something that we pay out of our account. It's not tax revenue. So it's not like we're increasing taxes to pay for it. It comes out of our general fund.
Chrissy, I have a question. What is the athletic fund modifications? It's been at zero.
So it needs to be renamed. I don't know why it's named. It's not for athletic funds. It's the 710 is well, this particular 10,000 is actually going to the special athletic fund, but normally there's other things that come out of 710 in the past, just not been budgeted for.
What is the special athletic fund?
So it pays for officials. OSAA things go through there. So like when we have a playoff game, the revenue gets deposited in there and we pay the expenses through it. It's a really weird fund. Honestly, I actually scale about it again this year because I'm like, what is the purpose of it? It just seems to take more money than it gives. So, but that's what it's for. It's mostly to pay for officials.
Thank you.
Okay, so and then on page 71 is our contingency. 4% is about 400,000, and I just ran it a little bit. So we have a contingency of 415,000. For grants, I think we only have a couple highlighted that are new. So on page 81, we received a grant for asbestos testing. So there's $25,000 in that grant fund when there hasn't been for a couple years. And that grant comes from the state. And page 83 is our special purpose grants. The main grant, there's two grants that are in this one. One is House Bill 3499, which is a special grant for our English language learners. And then the 17,000 is for a STEAM grant that we received that we're going to be able to do a robotics camp this summer. That actually
Come through.
what's coming through. I just haven't gotten the official number, but that's what we budgeted for.
Okay.
Yeah, just in case. Yeah, we'll only spend what we get, but just in case. So that's for a robotics camp this summer. So page 102 is our student investment account. And we budgeted this a little differently this year, which was actually pretty exciting. This year, we created the budget by looking at our strategic plan, and we built the budget around that, because the Student Investment Act, the true purpose of that is to take feedback from our community and use those funds to support those wants from the community. And so we did it that way this year. We looked at the strategic plan, we looked at the wants from the community, and we built the budget around that. So that's why you'll see like somebody that left this grant fund and went to the general fund, because it wasn't something that necessarily fit our strategic plan. So some of the things that are in our strategic plan are in the student investment account. We have a family engagement specialist, so someone who makes connections in the community between our Hispanic community and the schools, which has been she's made some huge strides this year. Same with a college and career coach. We had one this year, last year, and we are keeping her on staff for next year, because she has done some incredible things in terms of preparing our kids for college or trade schools or whatever it is that they want to do outside after school. And so that was important to the community. So we are using the funds to pay for them. Also, we brought back drama and art and band, and those portions of those employees' salaries in this fund as well. Because those were all things that the community identified as things that were important to them. And then also we are going to be hiring half-time newcomer teacher. We have had that individual at the end of this year being paid through our House Bill 3499 grant, but that grant is becoming less next year because of the way the grant cycle works. And so we've seen the importance of keeping her, and so we're going to keep her on or hire on somebody at halftime to continue to work with our newcomers and get them, really ingrained in our school.
And for everyone's awareness, if you're not aware, that SIA is funded by Oregon's corporate activities tax, was adopted by the legislature a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Any questions on that grant at all? The last thing I have is on page 131. It's our seismic grant. We were awarded almost $2.5 million grant for seismic rehabilitation of the middle school gym. And so you'll see on page 132 that amount has been budgeted, the 2.5 million increase or revenue and expenditure. And that's projected to be done in September of 2024. And if the bond does go through, there will be some grading of the projects done to fully maximize both sides of those grants for bond and grant. So that's all I have as far as what I've outlined or to share with you guys. But what questions do you have? And just as a reminder, we aren't going to adopt the budget tonight. We will have to reconvene next week. So if you look through this, you have questions, you can email them to me as well.
Do you, on the teachers, do they have to agree on this? Because, I've seen local schools going on strike lately.
Just be glad you're not in Silverton, aren't you glad?
Not why, is it, are we okay here? We're not worried about strikes or anything?
That's a contract.
It's a contract.
Yeah, they have a contract through next June.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we'll go into bargaining, and then at that point, we will determine what the next contract looks like.
So when I'm asking for, you're going to then prepare when we're going to spend that money as an addendum to this budget?
Yeah, it would be get built into here. As revenue and expenditures,
So we'll meet next week to discuss that.
correct?
Or
Or any other changes that may happen, so,
we have to adopt something,
correct.
maybe.
We can adopt this. Yeah.
Yeah, we would adopt this,
Right.
or if the law passes, or if you guys say, I don't want to do this, we want you to do this, then we can make those changes and you can adopt, we can adopt.
If we want a JV softball team, can we throw that in maybe?
Oh.
Right, we can do that, you can throw that in with that bond passes.
So.
You have to have a number.
I,
You have to have
No,
enough
I-
kids going out to have a JV.
No,
If-
I would disagree
if-
with
if
you.
really want, you really want a community softball team,
yeah,
he would have to figure out what it would cost, and we have
yeah,
to go back.
coach and all that stuff, yeah.
That has to come out of something out of here.
Yeah, I get that. But I will disagree with you because I've had kids sitting on the bench waiting to play on varsity and they couldn't. They sat on the bench. So I will disagree with you that we haven't had enough kids. And what comes first, the chicken or the egg? The kids go out or there's nowhere for them to play, so they don't go out. So go ahead.
I thought there was only about 10 or 11 girls.
That's
in the
right,
team.
there probably is, but I'm going back a few years.
Oh,
My
yeah, okay, yeah.
kids haven't been able to, they've sat on the bench.
Yeah.
Didn't get to play because there's no opportunity for them when you've got your designated good hitters and
Yeah,
players out there, because that's life.
Yeah.
The best play.
Yeah.
But that's why we have JV teams on every varsity team.
Oh, if there's numbers, I'm all for it. it seems like in the last few years, there's only been about
And I don't know,
10 or 11
I can't
girls.
think of any volleyball or any softball programs in our league that have JV softball
Oh, okay.
teams, so I don't know who they would play. But anyway, I could be wrong, but I
No,
think
but I mean, that's a good
there are
point.
JV softball teams.
But you know what?
it's also, yeah.
Maybe you get
You know,
JV.
you know, we'll get to that, you know, and because we needed a welding room, guess what? We got a welding room. So it's just, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right, yeah. And
Put
you-
John in charge, he'll get it done.
Yeah, well,
You can
a
coach,
varsity coach is
right?
maybe that has a fire.
You can coach.
Same thing.
You can coach.
No, what I mean,
So
I get what you.
But Dan, I can do the research on it. I can find out what else is out there in terms of other schools, and then I can also talk to Moff and see.
Okay.
The other piece of spring sports is the track team is huge. I don't know if you know how many kids
It's a pretty good size this year.
do track. So
I
a lot
think
of
it said 50 some.
kids actually choose to do track instead of some of those other.
Okay,
sports.
but we go back to.
Right, well,
what's
true.
available.
Yeah.
And what do they have?
Yeah.
Because if I was an athlete and all I could do was run in circles and, which I would never do. I would play softball, but it's just what's available. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll definitely do the research because, we can find out what's out there.
This year's softball team
Uh-huh.
almost didn't have enough girls to make a varsity.
Okay.
They had to
Okay.
beg some of the other
Okay.
girls.
They've been
I'll concede to that, but I'm not just.
But I agree with what you're
here.
saying,
It's-
yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you want to talk decades of spring sports and Flag and us and kids, so. Anyway, I don't mean to be assertive, but.
You're
I
not,
am.
you're doing your job.
Okay.
Fine with you.
I do need to clarify next week's meeting, because like Pete said, when the bond passes, this committee doesn't have a whole bunch of options on how that money's spent, right? I thought I heard that we'll have to decide how that money's spent, but that's already part of the bond.
Correct. No,
Okay.
because the budget is changing more than 10% from what I've just presented to you. The budget has to go before you again to be reviewed and approved. So,
With the bond money,
correct,
correct? Yes, okay, I may have just
Yeah.
misunderstood the back and forth.
yeah,
No,
no,
it's the bond money, we're not going to this general fund problem. It's mostly.
no, it'll be its own bond fund, it'll be a
Right,
400
it'll already
fund.
get out
Yeah.
into specific.
Correct. But because the overall total budget is increasing more than 10%, that's why I have to re-present it to you guys next week.
All right, well,
Oops.
no, I was gonna say.
While you're researching Nan's JV softball team,
Yes,
I'd like for you to research the golf team.
Okay.
Because I think that's a missing thing that
Do we
disappeared.
have one? We don't have.
We haven't had one probably for 8 to 10 years.
No idea.
Probably, it's been,
Sounds about.
it's been a long time, and I know that there are interested middle school students that would. I think a survey would be good to see the interest for that.
Sure,
If you're researching the JV softball team,
yeah, absolutely.
that would be fantastic.
One of the best golfers we've had. in school.
Are you gonna sign up to be?
And John signed up to be the coach.
I know I got it.
I don't think he's a very patient person when it comes. to-
Oh, he's, yeah.
So anyway, all right, is there any more questions on the budget before we adjourn? I mean, I'm not gonna adjourn yet because I don't see anybody here for public input. Is there anybody on Zoom for public input? Do we know? So if there's no questions, no public input. Our next meeting will be next week here at 6:30.
Yes.
And we'll know here in a couple of days if we'll be working hard that night or not.
Having a party, having a,
So,
watching on TV, no.
so anyway,
We check.
with that being said,
Closing prayer.
I.
Recess.
For tonight.
Recess. Yeah, we don't want to adjourn because
Amen. And
So recess the budget committee meeting until next week at 6:30, May 22nd. All approved?
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right,
Thank you.
see you next week.
well,